Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
Coming up on episode 407 of Wheel Bearings, we've got the Mini Cooper S 4-door, the McLaren 750S, the Cadillac Escalade, the Chevy Equinox, Audi reinvents the turn signal stock, BMW moves to plant fiber composites, China's auto plants are mostly sitting idle, Congress is trying to gut emissions cafe and IRA, Hyundai and Kia think 60 miles is enough, Stellantis is testing battery swaps, Ram ups their warranty, and Honda's got a new swappable battery last mile delivery vehicle. All that and more coming up next. This is episode 407 of Wheel Bearings. I am Sam Abul-Samad from Telemetry.
And I am Nicole Wakeland from AutoWeb.
And I'm Perry Stern from AutoNext and a bunch of other stuff.
Hey, Perry, thanks for joining us today. Robbie is out. He had some family commitments today, so he had to beg off for today. But thanks for stepping in.
Certainly, happy to do.
And since you are the guest today, how about if you go first?
Okay, so I assume we're talking about what we're driving.
Yeah, what have you been driving?
So I had this little yellow car that showed up a couple weeks ago. It was a McLaren 750S, and it was in volcano yellow. So it was. I mean, I think it would glow at night if I let it. It was so bright.
You have to pull the fuses out before you go to bed.
What's that?
Do you have to pull the fuses out before you go to bed so it doesn't
No, it didn't die. It drove perfectly fine. It was the ideal daily driver.
Well, that is right. I just looked it up. That is, whoa.
That is a very yellow car.
I've got like 30 McLarens in yellow.
And this one also had the black package. So it had black wheels, blacked out logos, blacked everything. So kind of Bumblebee-like. But it was... astounding how quick this car is. I've driven a McLaren 720S. That was the last fast McLaren, I guess you could say I've driven. This one made it feel slow.
Is there any McLaren that is not fast?
There's levels of fast. so this one is, well, it's what is it? 700. Well, it's 720S, so it's 720. What is, I guess, the PS, or 750S? Sorry. So it's 740 horsepower. With a twin turbo small V8 that's behind the driver, but 0 to 60 is under 3 seconds for a rear wheel drive car that's not electric.
Sounds kind of sluggish compared to the Corvette ZR1X we were talking about last week.
Everything sounds
the ZR1X. Yeah, are you going to drive that to the grocery store too?
Well, you could.
I suppose you could.
I mean,
I did drive the McLaren.
Corvettes are reasonably practical cars to use.
That was the Corvette you just discussed is not a typical Corvette, though.
It is not reasonably practical.
It still has a trunk in the back that will accommodate my paddleboard. I can put my stand up, my inflatable paddleboard in the trunk of a Corvette, of a C8 Corvette.
So therefore, it's practical.
Therefore, it is practical.
Well,
Okay.
you were just talking about a specific Corvette, not the C8 Corvette.
Well, no, the C8. I'm talking about C8s. My
Okay,
paddleboard will fit in the trunk of a C8 Corvette.
No, I understand that. I thought you were talking about the hyper electric crazy thing. That
I mean, the ZR1X is the the pinnacle of the C8 family for the time being.
Yes. No,
but
and
it's still a relatively practical car.
Right. And the McLaren is relatively practical.
Can you put a paddleboard in a McLaren?
I don't know. How big is a paddleboard?
It's what?
No.
A couple feet
I love
long.
that he's holding his hands up. Perry's like, no. Whatever your hands are is too big.
It's about this big around. Yeah. So what? About
you could if you didn't want to carry it
rolled up.
You could if you didn't carry a passenger. Because
behind the drive. What I'm saying is there a cargo area in the McLaren?
There is a cargo area. Two cargo areas actually. Okay, kinda. So the front cargo area will not. It's a frunk. It's under the hood. It can fit a couple backpacks. That's about it. But there's a panel, or not a panel. Basically a flat section behind the cockpit that you can actually put stuff in. You have to put it through the car. There's no hatch. But theoretically, if you didn't have a passenger, you could put something 4 or 5 feet long in there, I suppose.
Okay.
So it's possible.
Is it reasonable to load your groceries in there? If you're going to drive it to the grocery store, presumably you're going to purchase some groceries. Can you fit
put
all your groceries in
there? Depends on how many groceries you're buying. You could probably fit 2-3 bags in the frunk. You can fit lots of stuff in the passenger seat if you don't have anybody with you. Okay, it's not a practical car, but it's not. That's what it's not designed for. It's not designed as a practical car. It's not doing any towing or anything like that.
If it makes you feel any better, my paddleboard will not fit in the trunk of my Miata either. So
okay, it makes me feel a little better. But anyway, so the McLaren, it's amazing to drive because the driver's position has got a really wide windshield and the hood kind of flows off towards the ground, and so from the driver's seat all you see is road. You don't see the car at all, except for the fenders that pop up on the sides, and so you get this amazing view out the front of the road. Steering is go-kart like. I mean, it is amazing how quickly this thing can change direction. No body lean. I mean, it's a track car that's street legal. 0-60 they say is 2.8 seconds. 124 in about 7, and eventually it'll hit 206. But I was amazed at how quick it was because I accelerated from a stoplight, and it's very fast. It's throwing you back in the seat. But then I put my foot down all the way, which I hadn't done yet, and it was oh my god. I mean, you had to hold onto the steering wheel so you didn't get pushed back. I couldn't believe how quick it was. But it's still stable. I mean, it's rear wheel drive, but there wasn't any wheel spin. It just gripped and went. So I had a good time driving this car. It's also easy to drive around town. It's comfortable. It's not like trying to go, so cruising around 30 miles an hour is fine. You get a lot of attention. When I did go to the grocery store, I came out and 2 people must have seen me come into and were waiting for me to come out, because they followed me to the car to see if they could take pictures of the car. So I guess that's if you were to own something like this, I guess that's the downside is, you're not going to be anonymous.
You have to be social.
Yes, it is not subtle in any way. But the other cool thing that I noticed when I parked it in my garage is that when the lights are on, the engine has a red light in it, so it glows red. Which I thought, it's stupid and really cool all at the same time.
Okay.
So super
it was
fun
though.
Practical car.
So you want to guess the price?
Oh gosh.
$400,000.
You're getting there.
500,000.
It was four.
I was going to say 475.
Now, of course, I lost where the price was.
He's
here we
like,
go.
because I've said that.
420,000 as equipped.
420,000. Sure.
So it did have a lot of stuff on it too, but the destination charge I think may win the prize though.
Oh, destination! Wait, we have to guess. $24.95.
Well,
what do you think?
Last week we talked about the destination charge on the Mustang GT3 or GTD, which was $5,500. So I'm going to say $5,000.
I was way low.
$5,500.
Wow. Wow.
That also did not include the $1,000 gas guzzler tax too.
Oh my
All right.
gosh.
So back. Okay. So almost $500,000, half a million, or no, 400, you said $420,000. Okay. So $420,000. So
you could still buy something else for the $500,000.
So that is, roughly 4 times the price of a Corvette E-Ray, which will do 0 to 60 in about 2.6 seconds, and will hold my paddleboard in the trunk.
And when someone asks you what do you drive, do you say a Chevrolet or a McLaren? It depends. Someone who, I think it's a different customer. Someone who's buying this car wants an exotic. They don't want to say they're driving a Chevrolet. They want to say they're driving a McLaren. I think you do pay a lot for the exclusivity. Not that you're going to see a lot of E-Rays driving around, but you will see Corvettes on the road. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen many McLarens driving around Michigan recently. So it's, you pay for the exclusivity. I always love the conversation. People say, does McLaren compete against Ferrari and Lamborghini? And it doesn't really, because people who are buying a McLaren, if they also want a Ferrari, they're going to buy a Ferrari too. It's at that, when you're buying a $400,000 car, it's not your daily driver and it's not your only car.
Okay. So, fair enough.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So maybe you buy both.
So what, since this has a gas guzzler tax on it, what was the fuel economy of this thing?
I think I was getting close to 14 miles per gallon.
No, that's not too shabby.
I mean, not too bad.
Actually, let me just confirm, because I did check it. It was maybe it was 12. Sorry, 12 miles per gallon.
That's still not horrible, considering.
It's not horrible. I feel like I wasn't trying hard enough.
You need to go full on that gas pedal a little bit more.
Exactly. So yes, efficient, comfortable, perfect daily driver for $500,000.
For anyone that's interested in getting one, there is a 2024 McLaren 750S Spider, the convertible version, with only 20 miles on it, so it's brand new. That is available for sale, and it's in Volcano yellow with the black package. Wow! And it's at McLaren of Orlando in Florida. It is a mere $572,895.
So let's just
that's a hell of a deal. Yeah. So I did just look it up, and the EPA numbers on this one are 17 combined, 15 city, 19 on the highway. So on a road trip, this is practically fuel efficient.
I just love describing this car that way. Compared to some vehicles, yes, which is a little frightening.
Well, I have to say, the Escalade that I drove did not get much better fuel economy than the McLaren did.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So tell us about the Escalade.
So the Escalade is a completely different animal, obviously, but it will definitely hold a paddleboard. It will definitely hold paddleboards. It'll hold multiple paddleboards and the people that are riding the paddleboards. It's got tons of room inside. I mean, it's an Escalade. It's basically, a luxury Suburban. And, the new styling, I really like the new styling. They've gone back to the vertical headlights. It looks really nice. This particular one was, I would have called it silver, but it's actually latte metallic.
Is that the sort of champagne colored one?
Yeah.
The platinum? Yeah, I think that's the same one I had a few weeks back.
Probably. And so it's a new color for 2025. But it's, it has the new display screen, which I thought would be distracting. I mean, it's 55 inches. It goes from pillar to pillar. But, kind of what Lincoln is now doing, though Lincoln's is more up towards the windshield as almost like a heads up display, where this is more of where you would expect a display to be. But I thought it worked really well. I mean, when you're at in the driver's seat, the driver's display is nicely framed by the steering wheel, so you're not missing any parts that you have to look around to be able to see beyond the steering wheel. It's got a passenger display that's interesting enough that when my wife was sitting in the passenger seat, it lights up for her, but I can't see it. So it filters out so that if she's watching a movie, which she can with Bluetooth headphones in the passenger seat, the driver can't see it. So no distracting. My favorite feature, though, is the doors. It's got power doors. So when you grab the door handle and let go, it opens. You get in, start the car, and put your foot on the brake, the door automatically closes.
Ooh.
And you have a control panel in the center console that you can open or close all of the doors at once or each one individually. So
how long did you just sit in the driveway going whoosh, opening the doors, whoosh, closing the doors?
Only a couple times.
Only a couple times? Okay.
And it's also got sensors in the doors. So when you try to open the door and there's either traffic coming or there's another vehicle there, it won't smash into them. So you avoid door dings too. Or at least you avoid giving other people door dings.
Yeah. What they do to you,
Yeah. But it's, it drives nice. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, it has 24-inch wheels, 2-foot wheels, I like to call them. And they're massive, but unfortunately they're low profile tires. And so even though it's got air suspension and MagneRide and all of that, it's not a super comfortable ride. I really expected it to be a smoother ride than it was. But unless it's, perfectly smooth pavement, which is hard to find here in Michigan. But it also has the latest version of Super Cruise. Got on the freeway, set the cruise to 70. As I'm coming up on another car, didn't do a thing. It just signaled, went around him, came up, and then I had to signal back to get back into the other lane, but all hands free.
Nice.
So it works really well. That one is also not terribly cheap, but it's not as expensive as a McLaren. So it ran, I believe, as equipped, it was, now if I can find it, I believe it was $120,000, which is, 125, sorry.
So you could buy 3 of them or 1 McLaren.
Exactly. That was what,
right?
That's the decision people typically have to make.
The decision tree.
Do I buy 3 Escalades or a McLaren?
Well, what you could do is you could buy 3 of these Escalades and a Corvette or 1 McLaren.
Can you just think about that for a second? How many cars you can buy?
You can get a C8 Corvette for $70,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So 125, that's 375. Plus, so it would be slightly more than the McLaren, but close.
But I could buy like 4 Miatas for the price of the Escalade.
That is true. And, if it were me, I would take the 4 Miatas.
4 Miatas.
The Escalade.
Different colors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the biggest question is, could you fit the same amount of cargo in 4 Miatas as you could in an Escalade?
No.
And I don't think you could.
No, absolutely not.
No. So if that's your goal,
would you have more
the
fun?
answer is buy the Escalade, not the 4 Miatas.
Would you have more fun with 4 Miatas than you would with 1 Escalade?
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
See, it's all you got. There's a lot to consider.
And
here.
4 Miatas seat 8 people.
Yeah.
So
which is the same as 1 Escalade. Actually, it's more
Why
than
aren't
1
you
Escalade.
just buying 4 Miatas?
Well, because
Right, the Escalade only had 7 passenger because it had the bucket seats in the back.
So better seating in 4 Miatas.
Exactly.
Yes.
As long as the people aren't too tall.
This is opening up a whole new world of comparison.
I know, right? We should do everything based on would you buy that or the equivalent number of Miatas for every car?
Right. How many Miatas is this worth?
This is 5 Miatas of car here.
It's a new form of currency.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's better than cryptocurrency. At least you can do something with the Miatas.
It is a lot more fun than cryptocurrency. Yes, most definitely. So yeah, but otherwise the Escalade is lovely to drive, as a road trip car, it'd be perfect. But is it worth that much more than, say, a Tahoe, which can get you all the same passenger space and, or if you get a Yukon Denali, you're practically the Escalade level already. It just doesn't say Cadillac on it. It doesn't have power doors, which are cool. So, depending on what your priorities are, you can probably, get the equivalent to what you like in, one of the other GM products.
One
Probably.
issue I did have with the Escalade when I drove it was, you talked about that 55-inch display. The problem I had with it is, you're right, it's not as far up like towards the base of the windshield as it is on the Navigator. And so it actually still does have a heads-up display.
Right.
But it is further back than a standard display. So actually reaching to hit, because, so in the Navigator, the big display is not a touchscreen. You don't control anything directly on that big display. This still has a touchscreen for the infotainment interface on that big display, but it is further away than it was on the previous iteration, on the 2024 Escalade. And so it's actually, it's quite a reach to get to the infotainment stuff to do anything on there. So I almost had to lean forward a little bit to hit some of the stuff on the screen.
I would agree. It is definitely further back. And to that point, if there is also the central controller that you can use if you prefer.
Yes, that's true.
So like the Lincoln, and it's also has, it's the Google-based system. So the Google Assistant actually works pretty well for voice activation for accessing most things via voice, if you get used to it.
And you know what you can do in the Escalade that makes it a 100%
Let me guess,
winner
does
over
it have
the
something to
Navigator?
do with vents?
You can reach out, and the vents are actually closer to you than the screen is. So you can reach out and manipulate the vents. Just grab the little tab, direct the airflow wherever you want it at any moment in time without looking at it. It's great. I love that.
That seems so old school.
To me, if I was in the market for a luxury 3-row SUV and it came down to Escalade and Navigator, I would take the Escalade.
It's, just because of the vents, or?
Well, there's actually a lot of reasons. I actually thought that even with the 24-inch wheels, yes, it's not as comfortable as it should be. I still thought it was better ride and handling than the Navigator was. And also, you've got the vents, but you can also get the Escalade with that 3-liter inline-6 diesel, which, if
you
if
can't
doing
anymore. I don't.
Yeah, I think you can.
I thought that they discontinued it for 25, but I could be wrong.
Let me double check that, because I'm pretty sure you can. I know you can definitely get it in the Tahoe and Yukon.
I believe you can, but now I have to go look also. I think that I read that it was no longer an option, but I could be wrong.
Oh, well, that's a shame, because that was a fantastic engine.
Well, that's the interesting thing about Escalade also is
if you're doing a long road trip, you can get, 24, 25 miles per gallon with that thing easily.
True. And it's interesting that Escalade, of the big ones, like QX80, Navigator, Escalade's the only one still with a V8. The others have all gone to twin turbo 6,
Right.
which
I do not see the
are
diesel
more
on here anymore.
efficient. No, I think that it was discontinued for 25.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, that may be because they increased the availability on the GMC and the Chevy.
So they can't.
They made it available in more trims there. They may not have enough capacity to support Escalade as well.
That's definitely possible.
Well, in that case, then get a Yukon Denali with the diesel.
There you go.
Because it still has manual vents too.
It does.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great vehicle, but there are also great other choices out there too.
Yeah. All right.
So those are my garage for the week.
Okay.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Did you know you can support Wheel Bearings directly? Head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia and you can become a patron today. Your contributions will help fund the platforms and tools we use to bring the podcast to you. And exclusives and improvements are already on the way thanks to your generosity. So if you want to be part of an automotive podcast like no other, head to patreon.com/wheelbearingsmedia. We've updated the Wheel Bearings merch store, and now there's a whole bunch of new choices, new colors, new styles, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, travel mugs, stickers, aprons, tote bags, you name it. You can get your Wheel Bearings merch at shop.wheelbearings.media. Go check it out. That's shop.wheelbearings.media.
Not a bad way to go, I suppose.
And of course, just as you're wrapping that up, of course, Nicole had to step away,
Ran away
for a moment. So I'm going to jump in and talk about what I drove.
Okay.
So I had the kind of the, if you were to, kind of do a triangle of, kind of extremes, you could have the McLaren at one corner, the Escalade at another corner. And then I had a Mini Cooper S 4-door. The 2025 model. For 2025, they basically redesigned all the minis. They got rid of the Clubman, the old Clubman. They have the Cooper, the standard Mini, and they have the Countryman, which is actually what's in my driveway right now, and I'll talk about that next week. But the classic, the now somewhat classic Mini, the traditional Mini, which is still relatively small. Although if you ever park one of these next to a true classic Mini, the pre 2000 Minis that were made by Rover, this thing looks enormous compared to a real classic Mini. But
those things are so tiny.
Oh, I know. But you can get the Mini Cooper as either a 2-door or a 4-door. I had the 4-door, and it was, let me find the Monroney here. What was this color? It was blazing blue metallic, which is a fantastic color.
Blazing blue metallic. I'm Googling.
Yeah. With a Veskin beige.
Ooh, I like that.
Interior.
And when 100 of them pop up on my screen, it doesn't blind me like the McLaren did when 100 popped up on my screen.
Yeah.
Like looking into the sun.
So the Cooper S hardtop 4-door. This one, there is an electric version coming, but this looks more like what you think of as a Mini. It still has the round, although they're not actually circular; they're more elliptical headlights, but it still has round headlights, unlike the Countryman, which has gone to a more parallelogram shape for its headlights. This one had the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo, so it has 201 horsepower, 221 foot-pounds of torque. It had a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and this is the Cooper S. And I think one thing that was a little disappointing. Well, there's a couple things that were a little disappointing about it. I really like the size, and even as a Mini, the 4-door is longer than the 2-door, so it's not a huge car, but I was able to set the driver's seat where I set it, and I was able to get into the rear seat behind myself, which I didn't have any excess leg room or headroom. I had more headroom, more available headroom, but no excess leg room. My knees were basically up against the back of the seat, but I could sit back there. So, you could take for adults, for shorter trips. You wouldn't want to do a cross-country road trip, or any kind of longer road trip with adults in the back seat. Kids will be fine in the back seat. But adults, if they're taller than about 5'10", 5'11", they're probably going to start feeling a little cramped back there. Robbie would not be happy in the back seat of the Mini, unless of course he was riding behind Jill Simonillo, in which case he'd be fine. Yeah.
The perfect combination.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a relatively usable back seat. One of the things that I don't like with the new generation Mini, and this applies to both the regular ones and the Countryman. They've gone away. They have always, the Minis have always had this large round dial or gauge dial thing in the middle, that in recent years also incorporated a touchscreen into there. But there was some actual physical gauges in there as well. They've now made it larger. It's still circular, and it's just all one large touchscreen. And because they've made it larger, they've moved some stuff into the touchscreen interface, like the temperature controls, and a bunch of other stuff, which I'm not crazy about. And because it's circular, the temperature controls are in the two bottom quadrants, and they're kind of arcs, and you got to touch it, you got to tap it, and then drag it in one direction or the other. So it's a couple of actions to adjust the temperature. And then to adjust the fan speeds, you got to tap the little fan icon in the bottom toolbar of the screen. And then the overall climate controls come up, and you can adjust, whether you want automatic climate control or manual, and where you want the airflow. The vents are still manual, which is good, but all the other stuff is in the touchscreen, and it's just kind of fiddly to use. And also, because it's circular, there's, unlike a lot of touchscreen interfaces, there's no like little ledge or shelf or anything along the bottom edge, because there is no bottom edge. And so, you can't really brace your hand against that, when you're tapping stuff, to give you a little more precision when you're tapping things on the screen. So it's gotten a lot more fiddly to use. And, previously we had, the row of toggle switches down below the round center dial. And those have been reduced down. So now there's only a couple of things in there, and a couple of switches down there. There is in the middle, there is what kind of looks like a key. So there's like a round thing, like a round tab that sticks out. So instead of a push button start, you have what kind of looks like a key, but it's permanently in there, and you twist it to the right to start the car, and or to start the engine. You twist it to the left to shut it off. So instead of pressing a button, you're doing a little twist. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of cute. I like that. And then beside that, to the right, there's a volume knob. To the left, there is what looks like kind of a wider toggle switch, which is that's your transmission shifter, and you flip it up to go in reverse, you flip it down to go into drive, and then there's a park button next to it. And then down below, there's a row of push buttons for front and rear defogger, and a couple of other things. So overall, it's just more fiddly to use than before. To the right of the start stop switch, there's also another toggle, a second toggle, which is to pick the experiences. So that's your drive mode button. And you've got a bunch of different experiences you can toggle through. There's the eco mode and a couple of others. And each time you flip that, it changes the skin on the touchscreen. So you get a different kind of look and feel. The controls are still in roughly the same place, but it's different color patterns and stuff like that. And when you flip the experiences button up, all the others from normal are down. When you flip it up, you get the go-kart mode. That should just be the default. That gives you a bunch of gauges, big big gauges on the screen. It looks kind of like a big chronometer. It's a pretty cool one. And that one also gives you a genuinely different driving experience. Because as I mentioned, this thing has a DCT in it. Unfortunately, there's no paddle shifters. So not under any of the modes, there's no way to manually control the transmission. The only thing you can do is select between park, reverse, and neutral and drive. That's it. You have no control over which gear it's in. But when you put it in go-kart mode, it does do downshifting for you. And it's kind of like on the Hyundai N models, on the Veloster N and Elantra N, where, as you're braking, braking to slow down or head into a corner, it downshifts for you. So you'll feel it and you'll hear it downshifting. Just pretty much the way you would if you were shifting manually, except you have no mechanism whatsoever to do any kind of manual shifting. But it's still pretty cool. It makes a little more noise when you're in the go-kart mode. But overall handling is the same. Regardless of what mode you're in, it's got pretty good steering feel. It's got a nice thick rim steering wheel. It's easy you get a nice grip on it. It feels really good in the hands. The interior design is kind of still kind of funky, in a mini kind of way. So like in the center console, there's a little storage box, and it's got, a fabric loop, that you grab to open it up, to lift it up, which is kind of neat. The one that I had, had these kind of bronze accent trims on around the cup holders and on the steering wheel, and the knobs on the vents that you twist to open and close the vents, and then move around to control the airflow. There's this fabric covering across the dashboard that has kind of on the ends, it's kind of I guess, sort of like a houndstooth pattern. And then it's got a gradient, towards the middle. It just goes more towards a solid gray. And it's cool looking. I like it. It's different. And it was generally a really fun car to drive. Although, like I said, without any kind of manual control over the transmission, it kind of loses a little bit. And the funny thing is, we used to own a Volkswagen Jetta TDI that had a DSG, a dual clutch transmission in there. So I'm used, and I've driven many other cars with dual clutch transmission. So I'm used to the kind of little bit of lag when you first hit the accelerator pedal and you're going, and it's no different than it was when we had our VW, but after driving so many EVs, it has become much more noticeable to me. Because you don't have that instant response when you press the accelerator pedal. There's a little bit of lag, and then the transmission, engages the clutch, the first gear clutch, and you start going. So you have to get a little used to that. The one that I had the optional heads-up display, which Mini uses this lower-cost heads-up display system that has a little piece of glass that flips up from the dashboard. So it's a smaller HUD, and it's down a little bit lower than typical heads-up displays are. And you find these on some Mazdas and various other vehicles that have used them.
Do they still do it on Mazda? I was just thinking about that the other day. Or have they gotten rid of the little flip-up piece?
I think Mazda still has that on the CX-30 and the 3.
Oh, it does. Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure. It's been.
I just remember the first time I saw that, thinking that was such a weird thing that it just kind of deploys, and I like, does any of them do that? But okay.
The Mini Cooper S 4-door is rated at 32 miles per gallon combined, 28 city, 39 highway. I did not get that good. I was getting like 27.
Which is still not bad.
It's
not bad, but it's not great for a small car like this. I expected a little better. Of course, I was driving it fairly briskly.
Fairly briskly. I love that. Okay.
I wasn't driving it like a madman.
Mm-hmm.
But it does still have, minis still have that kind of go-kart feel to them, because as modern cars go, it is very small, not as small as a Fiat 500, but it still has a lot more of the go-kart feel to it than the Fiat does, or a lot of other small cars. So it's still quite fun to drive, although I would say not quite as much fun as it was, without having some manual control over the gearbox, and like I said, the finicky nature of the touchscreen interface was just a little annoying. But other than that, it's good. It's got lots of USB ports. It's got a couple in the front, a couple in the back, 10 airbags. It's got Sirius. It's got the one I had heated steering wheel and front seats, and center armrest. Yeah, heated steering wheel, and front seat and center armrest. There's also a wireless charging pad below the center stack, or actually, yeah, it's at the bottom of the center stack, just in front of the cup holders. And what's cool with the wireless charging pad is there's like a plastic clip and then an elastic band that goes across, and so you slide your phone down in there, and it's not moving anywhere. So once you slide it into the right spot for it to start charging, it's going to stay there.
That's such a pet peeve when your phone slides around and you suddenly look and you're like, wait, it hasn't been charging for the last half hour because it slid 1/4 of an inch and now it's not perfectly in contact with the wireless charging. I hate that.
There's not a whole lot of rear cargo space behind the rear seats, but if you fold the rear seats down, you have lots of cargo space. So we used it last week to go out to the lake, and the paddleboard fit in there quite nicely, along with a couple of beach chairs and some other assorted stuff. So that worked well. So yeah, it's still fun to drive, but arguably not quite as much fun as it used to be.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've driven that. I also drove the John Cooper Works edition, and I mean, it's quick, but it just doesn't quite feel as agile as it used to. And I do miss the manual transmission.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I don't think there's a manual available at all anymore. In any
no,
trim
they've discontinued it completely for 25.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Yeah.
The other kind of downer, $39,795.
Ouch.
Yeah, $40,000 for this Mini Cooper S, and this isn't even the highest end model,
right?
So
that's a lot.
Take a guess at the destination charge.
$1,995.
$1,200.
Perry gets this one. It was only $995.
Wow, that's really low.
Yeah, and these are still built in Oxford in the UK. So the Countrymen are built in Germany, but the standard traditional Mini Coopers are still built in the UK. All right.
I do like the fact that there is a head-up display, though, because like the original Minis, there is no driver's display. It's all in the middle.
Yeah.
That center display is the only display. So having the heads-up display kind of gives you a speedometer in front of you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to kind of look to the middle.
Yeah. Speedometer and navigation prompts and things like that also show up in there.
Yeah.
So that's all good. And there is support for wireless CarPlay and Android Auto as well, which looks kind of weird. You got this circular display and then this square box in the middle that has your phone projection stuff in the middle of that.
That wouldn't look as seamless as they'd probably like.
No. But it leaves room at the top for the speedometer and the transmission indicator, and then for your climate controls around the perimeter. So, all right, Nicole, what did you drive?
Yes. I had the 2025 Equinox Active All-Wheel Drive, the full title of it. So the color is cool. Wait, the color is called Cacti Green. Ooh, and I just realized the interior color is called Maple Sugar. And just like that, I want pancakes. Maple Sugar. It's kind of, I'm thinking, I'm like, what? It's kind of is sort of a like light tan kind of color. I don't know that I'd call it maple sugar. Does maple sugar look like that? I guess maybe.
Yeah.
But the Cacti Green
sounds tasty.
Yeah, right. Now I'm hungry. But the Cacti Green, I love that exterior. It's this sort of light green. It's sort of a pretty color. Anyway, so completely redesigned for 2025. The exterior is different. They introduced the active trim, which is what I had this week, which is sort of their off-road inspired variant. Not like you're going to do hardcore off-roading, but it gets like all-terrain tires and the suspension's tuned a little bit differently. It gets upgraded features kind of all around. For all-wheel drive models, it now gets an 8-speed automatic instead of the previous 6-speed. But if you get oh my God, what's the other one? Front wheel drive. Sorry, front wheel drive. I'm like, what's that other drive? Front wheel drive. It has this like a brain cramp. Now I'm really hungry. I need the food now. All I can think of is maple sugar. So it has a CVT. So I had the all-wheel drive, so I had the 8-speed automatic, which is, it does just fine. Power for this, it's a 1.5 liter turbo 4. It has 175 horsepower and 203 pound-feet of torque. It's an adequate engine, and it's not especially engaging. That's not why you're buying a Chevy Equinox. It's fine. I think I found it a little bit not rough in terms of the transmission. The transmission is fine, but rough just getting up to speed, and that you sort of get on the highway and you'd mash that gas pedal, and it took a second, like a noticeable, like, wait a second. And then once it goes pretty good, but it just takes a second. So being in heavy, high-speed highway traffic, trying to maneuver around really slow cars or get out of the way people coming onto the highway as they're merging into that traffic, it's a little bit more challenging. I think for most people, you're probably not going to be especially disappointed. I mean, you got to think about how people drive their cars. If you're just looking for an everyday driver, you're just going around town, you're just doing average stuff, fine. If you're someone who's more interested in an engaging drive experience, you're not going to find it with this. It's just not that kind of powerful vehicle. On the plus side, the fuel economy, and I didn't check mine. Sorry, guys. It gets 24 city, 29 highway for 26 combined. So you get decent fuel economy. So you don't have a especially powerful engine, but you get decent fuel economy with an all-wheel drive little, I don't know, I want to call it a crossover. I'm going to call it a crossover. I feel like sometimes it's like crossover. No, we call it an SUV. No, we call it a crossover coupe. No, we call it an SUV coupe. No, we call it a sedan. Like everyone has these weird names. I'm calling it a crossover. So it has seating 4 or 5. I feel like the back seat's a little on the tight side. You can definitely fit 3 people back there, but only if your drive isn't super long. When Russ was up front and adjusted the seats back, and he's 6'3", when he adjusted the seat to be comfortable up front, it definitely cut in to the rear seat room. Whoever was in the back, if there's one person, is going to want to sit behind me because I'm shorter in the driver's side. So it's not hugely roomy, but it is, again, this. I feel like I'm knocking it, but it's just that it's not that premium powertrain, premium interior, huge roomy thing. But what it does well. Like there's 3 trims. The LT starts at $28,600 for front wheel drive. You're going to add $2,000 if you want all-wheel drive. And it's the same deal. There's an extra $2,000 if you on the RS. The front wheel drive is $33,000. Add $2,000 for the all-wheel drive. The active is $33,000. $2,000 for the all-wheel drive. So what I was doing, it is priced for $35,000. I had a couple of options on mine. There's a panoramic sunroof, which I actually really liked, but it's $14.95. It adds a lot for that panoramic sunroof, but it does it just adds so much light. It really does make a car feel bigger. If you want it to feel roomy, if you want it to feel more open, a panoramic sunroof is amazing. It has a technology package that was an extra $1,000. It has a convenient package that was another $1,000. So there's a lot of bits and pieces. But I mean, you can get heated rear outboard seats on this. That's part of that convenience package. So you can make it a pretty nice little car. The price for mine all in, except for destination, was $38,480. You guys want to take a guess at the destination on this?
$14.95.
I was just gonna say $1,500. So.
Nope, you $14.95. That's still too high, but Sam is the closest. It's $13.95.
Oh, okay.
So not crazy, not terrible. So all in with everything, you're just under $40,000 for this one. But again, this has all those little extra bits and pieces. It is a nice interior. I was surprisingly, I was more impressed with the style and the comfort and the looks on this car than I was with the powertrain. The powertrain is where it kind of is a little bit lacking. I just felt like it didn't have enough oomph. I wanted it to have a little bit more. The interior, however, was surprisingly nice because a lot of the time I'm sort of like ho-hum on Chevy interiors. They strike me a little wrong. A lot of them.
They traditionally have been on the cheap feeling side.
On the cheap feeling side, on the ho-hum side, yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of plastic and stuff. This had some nice stuff like on the dashboard, the maple sugar trim on the dashboard. It had a texture to it. I was trying to find what they call it, and I couldn't find them saying what this texture was, but it made me think of like a snake skin. Like it had that sort of like a bumpy, triangle-y kind of texture to it.
Oh, interesting.
It was really cool, but it gave it felt cool, and B, it also looks cool. Instead of just being this flat, boring plane, it has some texture to it. The seats were comfortable. They were really nice. The ride in this was really good. I took it back and forth into Boston a couple of times. I took it some side roads up here. I took it through Salem, Mass, and the downtown where the roads are iffy and congested, and you've got, yucky city streets to deal with in a New England town. It's very comfortable. I spent a lot of time stuck in traffic in this one, actually. So that's like the test, I think, of a vehicle's comfort, that or a road trip. When you're just sitting there forever and you suddenly like, oh God, get me out of this thing. I'm done. Nope. It was comfortable. I was really, really comfortable in this. So I feel like in terms of the style and the handling, which is really nice, and the comfort and features that you get for that price, it's a good buy. The only drawback for me is just that 175 horsepower, and that was just with me and Russ in the car, and it felt So I'm wondering, once you put a couple kids in the back and you load up the cargo, put all that stuff in there, put a bunch of weight in there, you're going to probably feel that even more so. Because there is, behind the rear seats, there's 29.8 cubic feet back there. So you've got a decent amount of room to shove some cargo back there. And it can tow 1,500 pounds in the all-wheel drive if you want to tow some stuff. So it's not, I like it, but I can't love it because the powertrain isn't good enough for me.
You're just spoiled.
They offer a different engine for that?
A 600 horsepower electric SUV.
Well, I know. I get into that, and I want that 600 horsepower. No, I didn't think you guys, have you both driven this?
I have, yeah.
I haven't driven the new Equinox, but yeah, I could see how 175 horse. And I was just looking. I guess there is no other engine option, even for the RS.
No, it's the only one. The only option is, if you go front drive, you get a CVT. Rear drive or all wheel drive, you get the 8-speed.
The 8-speed. What did you think, Sam, driving this? You said you've driven it too.
Yeah, it's not a speed demon. It's leisurely, but I think it's also adequate.
Yeah.
For what you're doing 99% of the time, just as a daily run around vehicle, as a daily commuter, it's fine. It's not going to press you back into your seat, but it will relatively easily merge into traffic as you're getting on the highway and things like that. Right. I'm fine with it, for most people. It's certainly, it's a lot more than, what you get, with what is, I think, about 114 horsepower and something like the Hyundai Venue. Mm-hmm. It's adequate.
Yeah.
It's not exciting, but it's adequate. One thing you mentioned, about the rear seat room, one of the interesting details that they changed for this generation of the Equinox, all the previous generations of the Equinox, this is the 4th generation. The previous 3 generations, one of the features they always had was the rear seat could slide back and forward like 8 inches. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted more rear seat passenger space and you didn't need the cargo space on a particular day, you could slide that seat back and you had tons of rear seat room. Or if you needed extra cargo space for a trip, you could slide it forward. This time the rear seat is just fixed in place. Yeah. And that reduced some cost and some weight, but it also meant that they compromised on the rear seat. And I think, they probably took a look at, who's buying these things, what are they using it for? And they figured, okay, for most of the customers for this thing, they're going to be more interested in the cargo space. And, almost 30 cubic feet of cargo space is pretty good.
Right.
I mean, there's a pretty good sized cargo area in this.
Yeah. And if you fold those down total, like if you're just want to use this to haul cargo, it's 63.5 cubic feet. So for its size, it's really great for cargo. I like this. I just found that I like a little bit of more engaging of a drive, but I think for a lot of people, if that's not your priority, it is perfectly adequate on the powertrain. It's not just especially zippy. And even like in terms of features, like for this one, like I said, this is just under 40, the way this one is all loaded up, but standard, it has an 11.3 inch touchscreen. That's standard for the infotainment. There's a standard 11 inch instrument cluster that's also digital. So you have that. So you've got wireless Apple CarPlay, and Android Auto that's standard across all the trims. So, I mean, you're getting a lot. It has a lot of features to it. And my phone stayed nicely in place. I should mention that since we were talking, I shoved my phone in there, even stop and go traffic. It stayed exactly where I put it.
And you could move the vents just by moving.
And I could just reach out. And the vents are super cool. The vents look like they're round. It has this very airplane kind of
like a jet engine,
like a jet engine, yeah. And so it really does look great. So I like this car. The only thing I'm like, if you really really like, not even that you want to have a McLaren or an Escalade or a Corvette, you just want something that's more powerful. You're going to find this one a little bit underpowered. But if that isn't as big a priority, and you're like, that's fine. It does everything else I want it to do. It's in a good price and it looks good and it's comfy. Go for it.
I would imagine a lot of buyers of that are probably prioritizing fuel efficiency over performance anyway.
Exactly. So I mean, that's the thing. The fuel economy, like I said, combined, it's 26 mpg. If that's your fuel, that's good. And if you're driving a lot, especially like I think if you're someone who's hauling kids around town, I always remember when the girls were little that it felt like I spent all my time driving around town because everything they had were on opposite sides, like east side, west side, east side. You were always going back and forth. Nothing could be in the same place at the same time. It always required. So you do a lot of driving around, especially in that kind of scenario. If you've got a family and you're driving all over the place during a typical day, I think that's great. I think it does a really good job. I like it. I like it overall.
All right.
Cool.
Let's dive into some of the stories of the week. So Audi has just introduced in Europe the new 2026 Q3, and they did something interesting. Like Tesla a couple of years ago decided, we don't need stocks on the steering column for turn signals and stuff like that. You can do all that with buttons on the steering wheel. Audi got rid of the traditional stocks as well in the Q3, but they've done it in a different way. So what you actually end up with is basically instead of having the full stock being pivoted from the steering column, there's a horizontal bar behind the steering wheel, and then there's basically switches on the end of this bar on either side. So on the right hand side, you've got the transmission selector, and I think based on what I'm seeing here, it actually looks, Hyundai has done something similar on some of their vehicles where they've got a fixed stock, but on that one you have to twist the end of it to go into drive or reverse or neutral, and then press in to go to park. This one, they have like a rocker switch on the end that you push up or down, so your hands can stay on the steering wheel and you can do it with your finger. And then on the right hand side, again, for the turn signals, instead of a full moving stock, there's a corresponding switch on the other side that you just tap it with your finger up or down to engage the turn signal, and you can push in to get the windshield wipers, and then there's a little knob on there to control the wipers. It's an interesting approach. What do you think of this?
Okay, I'm looking at the right-hand side where it has the shifter. I feel like I can get behind that, but the left-hand side where it has the rear wiper, the front wiper, the high beam headlights,
there's a lot going on there.
I'm trying to get them all. And there's dials and there's buttons. I am telling you right now, I'm going to try and turn on my windshield wipers. I'm going to be flashing my high beams, turning that that is going to be, that looks so over engineered. Is that fair to say, Sam? As an engineer, it looks it's complicated. Why is all that stuff in that little spot?
It looks very complicated. And imagine you're trying to do that with a couple fingers, while your hand's still on the wheel, and doing all these things without looking at them. Because that's kind of, you used to be able to just reach over and flip, turn on the windshield wipers or do whatever. So it does seem like a lot.
I feel like,
but it's hard to say without actually using it to know for sure.
Keep in mind, this is German.
Yeah, I'm looking at the tiny little dial that reminds me of a volume knob that looks like it twists, like it's a little spinny dial that either turns off the wipers or sets it to high or low or various degrees of intermittent, like automatic. No, I'd mess that up in a heartbeat. I'm going to tell you, if I ever drive an Audi with this, you're going to be like, "Where's Nicole? Look at the car with its wipers and its headlights going crazy. That's her." As I'm trying to figure that. That's Nicole.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see until we get a chance to drive it. But yeah,
right.
I agree. It does look a little more, especially the left-hand side, because there's the right-hand side, like I said, is just the transmission. The left-hand side, you're controlling wipers, you're controlling lights, and you're controlling turn signal. And I do see the potential for some mode confusion there.
Mode confusion. I like that description.
Yeah, I mean,
mode confusion.
To have two push-in buttons that are parallel, but one's further in, one for the rear wiper, one for the front. That seems really difficult to negotiate.
Yeah,
but like you said, it's hard to say without actually trying to use it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I might get used to this, but who knows? All right.
I don't know that I would get used to it. I feel like I would not.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, how important is it to reinvent the wheel constantly, so to speak. But
yeah. Well, I think one of the challenges designers are having, especially in recent years, as they've gone to designs, that are where they're trying to move, especially as they're trying to move the transmission selector away from the center console and going back to a column shift of some sort, and that Equinox, that has a column shift as well, is, for a lot of vehicles for the last couple of decades, what we've had kind of the, not quite a standard, but, probably the most common arrangement has been the right-hand steering, the right-hand stock on the column would be for wipers, and then the left side would be for your turn signals
and headlights.
Yeah,
often.
And then in some cases, like BMW, they also put the trip computer or cruise control engagement on that left-hand stock. But now, as we're moving towards getting the transmission away from the center stack and onto the console, now you've got another thing there and trying to figure out, okay, how do I arrange these controls that I still have to do, with just two, trying not to have a proliferation of stocks on the steering column. I think it's an interesting interface design challenge, and I'm not sure that anybody's quite nailed it yet.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, Mercedes started that a long time ago with putting the stock. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were one of the first to put the transmission stock on as where you used to have wipers.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how many times I got into when I had to test S-Class and it would start raining and I would put it in neutral, thinking I was putting the wipers on. Because, I mean, and now, because we've driven all these newer cars that have gone that way, it's not as much of a stretch as it was when they first started doing it. But even like the Cadillac, it's now, the previous year was in the center. Now it's up on the stock, and it freed up so much space in the center console that they have a video screen there now. They've got wireless chargers. They've got, it does make a lot of sense to get it out of the center console.
Yeah, absolutely. And since these are all electronic controls for the transmission anyway, and very few vehicles actually have a physical cable between that shifter and the transmission anymore, or a linkage. You can put it anywhere.
Right, gives you a lot of options.
Ram has done, Chrysler and other Stellantis brands have done the rotary dial on the dashboard for the transmission. Lincoln has the piano key push buttons. I think the column mounted shifter is actually the best solution. I find that works best, but it does take a little getting used to. And actually, it's for someone as old as me, that learned to drive
that's where it used to be.
That's where shifters always were. They were always on the column. You had that 3 on the tree behind the steering wheel. And then your turn signal was on the left-hand side, and there was no other stuff. The wipers, the wiper control was usually just a switch on the dashboard. You didn't have intermittent wipers or anything like that. You didn't have rear wipers. So, it was a lot simpler. Now we're trying to cram a lot more functionality into these 2 steering column stocks. And like I said, it's still a work in progress, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right. BMW. They've been doing stuff with carbon fiber for a long time. They've had various carbon fiber components. The i3 and the i8 had carbon fiber structures. They weren't the first. That was McLaren back with the F1 in the 90s. But, BMW's had options like carbon fiber roof panels for a while now. And that, helps reduce overall weight of the vehicle. It also helps lower the center of gravity, especially for a performance model, because you're replacing the weight of steel in the roof with something much lighter. But now the problem with carbon fiber is it's expensive, and so they're looking at alternative solutions that give you the strength and the lightweight, and they're apparently going to be introducing flax-based fiber composites, fiber reinforcement for the plastic panels.
It looks it looks very carbon fiber. When you glance at it, I don't think if you just glanced, you might not immediately know. It just had different look in a cool kind of way.
Yeah. It's still conceptually a very similar thing to the way carbon fiber is done, where you've got, the fibers being weaved into a mat and then, injecting plastic around that, to make a composite panel. But it's still got that same kind of look, a similar kind of look, but it should be cheaper and more sustainable.
Yes, more sustainable.
Is it as strong as carbon fiber?
That's what I was trying to figure out too, Perry. I was looking through this story and I don't see them.
Yeah.
They talk about how because that was part of it. The carbon fiber is really, really strong. Like, I don't see them saying
just talking about how lightweight it is and renewable and all of that. And lightweight obviously is a big deal, but
it's probably not going to be as strong as carbon fiber, but the question is it strong enough? And presumably, especially for this roof panel, it's strong enough. Because the roof panel, is generally, in a crash is not the thing that is taking most of the load. That's in the pillars and the frame around the side glass. That's where most of the structural load is. And as long as those hold up, then, the panel, itself, doesn't have to take as much load. It's more going to be, if it's getting impacted directly, like if you have a rollover and, it rolls over on top of a bollard or something like that, or something that's going to intrude, spear through it. But, it should still be strong enough. And, some of the other parts that they're showing on here are, some of the trim pieces around the rear exhausts and various other places where their strength is not even an issue. They've been using carbon fiber just, as weight reduction, but, these are not structural parts so strength, and it's like, when you see carbon fiber, trim pieces in your interior and your dashboard, you don't need carbon fiber there.
No, and it's true. It's not like they're talking about building a monocoque out of
that's true.
You're still gonna have the just like you have different levels of steel, different strengths of steel throughout the frame. I would imagine that this would just be additional components.
Yeah, and they're still using carbon fiber in some areas of the vehicle for actual structural components,
Right.
but just not for some of these things. All right,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So China, Chinese cars have been getting pushed out more and more into export markets outside of China. China's made huge progress over the last 15 years. And it's funny, I'm listening to a book right now called Apple in China, that one of the main thesis of the thing is how Apple moved most of their production from other countries. They used to produce stuff in addition to producing stuff in-house in factories in the U.S. and in Ireland and Singapore. They first started moving stuff to Japan and then Taiwan, and now they make most of their stuff in China with contract manufacturers like Foxconn. And one of the things that happened there with Foxconn is that they would Foxconn and Chinese authorities would get new people rotating into various jobs at the supplier factories in China, and Apple would be training all these people in all their manufacturing processes, their quality processes, the design and engineering, because they had to be familiar with this stuff. And then, after they gained experience, those people would go work somewhere else, and they bring in more people, and those people would get trained by Apple. And all of a sudden you had a whole bunch of Chinese electronics manufacturers that were populated by people who got trained at Apple. And largely the same thing has happened in the auto industry. It used to be that, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even, Chinese cars were considered kind of a joke. They were poorly designed. They were poorly manufactured. But as the Chinese market started taking off, Western manufacturers, for GM in particular, but also Volkswagen and other European manufacturers went in and they formed joint ventures with Chinese companies, and they started building their cars in China and training Chinese engineers and manufacturing people, how to design and build and manufacture their vehicles. And then those people eventually went off somewhere else and worked and started. And now all of a sudden you have several hundred automakers in China that are mostly making really interesting, really, really good quality products. The problem is you have too many of them. And, it's now estimated, there was a new study that was just released from the Gasgoo Automotive Research Institute in China, that currently there is about production capacity for about 55 million vehicles a year in China. But last year they only sold 27 million vehicles in China.
Wow.
It's a problem.
Yes.
It's a problem.
And even with exports, they exported about another 4 million vehicles from China. So that's still about 24 million units of excess capacity.
Were they ever selling 55 million vehicles?
No.
So they've never sold up to the capacity?
No, not even close. And the capacity has been growing far faster than because there's all these new car companies springing up, all these new brands springing up. And there's never been anywhere close to capacity, although the problem has just been getting steadily worse over the years. And they estimate that in 2024, the capacity utilization in China was only 49.5%, which is really, that's not good. Generally,
waste.
in manufacturing, because you're, in terms of your capital expenditure to build a factory, that's one of your most expensive parts of the production process. And if you've got capacity that you've installed that is sitting there idle, that's a lot of fixed costs, and it makes it very difficult to actually be profitable. And only a handful of Chinese automakers, generally, it's been considered that you need at least 80 to 85% capacity utilization to be profitable. And if you're running much below 80%, or certainly much below 75%, you're probably going to be losing money because of your fixed costs. Well, there's a ton of Chinese automakers that are running in the low single digits.
Yeah, what are these, like 1.5, 1.7?
Yeah. Hainan,
But some of these I've not even heard of. Have you heard of these? Like, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's five or six that I've never heard of.
Zhengzhou Nissan I've heard of. SAIC Maxus. I haven't heard of Maxus, but this is one of the even a lot of the traditional Chinese automakers like SAIC have been launching new brands and putting them in new factories. And so SAIC Maxus is, I think, Maxus is one of the new brands from SAIC, Shanghai Automotive Industries. And it's just, it's insane. I mean, they're at 6.6% capacity utilization.
So are these new companies building assembly lines, building factories capable of, was it with high hopes that they're going to sell many more vehicles, or is it just, this is how we do it?
I think the hope was that they would sell more vehicles. I think, the Chinese government, I think, is now, a lot of these have had support from various levels of Chinese authorities, like provincial or local governments, where the factories are located. So there's been a lot of subsidies, to build the factories. But, I think the national government, the CCP, is now, they're looking to start condensing some of this capacity and starting to push for some consolidation in the industry, because there's just too many brands.
Yeah.
And too many of them are, they're all mostly building pretty decent vehicles, but, a lot of them look pretty much alike, and there's not a lot of differentiation between many of these. And so, you've got companies that are, let's see, this one here, Hainan Haima Automobile Company, started off as a partnership between Mazda and then got investment from FAW Group, which is First Auto Works. They were at 1.5% utilization last year. They have an assembly line capable of building 450,000 vehicles. They only built 6,836 last year.
Wow.
And, even some of the better known companies like NIO and Xiaopeng, they are still not doing great. They're still not making money because, I think NIO sold about 350,000 vehicles last year. There's only a handful of companies that are selling, upwards of 1 million vehicles a year.
Wow.
Or even utilizing most of their capacity.
So this Mengxi Tech. So Mengxi apparently is an offshoot of Dongfeng Motor Company that made military vehicles.
Yeah.
And so they said that this Mengxi or M Hero focuses on producing high performance luxury or off-road extended range electric vehicles for civilian market. But so I'm guessing, it's one of these, we already know how to build cars. We'll build cars for consumers.
Yeah.
And along with everybody else, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not enough.
Yeah. So, the reason, this is obviously a problem for China, but it's also a problem for the rest of the world, because when you've got, upwards of 20 million units of excess capacity, you're going to want to sell that product somewhere. And this is why Chinese automakers are pushing into markets outside of China, especially Latin America and to a lesser degree Europe. But they're going to want to sell these things everywhere. They're going to want to utilize this capacity at some point. They'll probably never get to full utilization of all this capacity. I suspect a bunch of these factories are going to end up getting scrapped. But it's going to make it tough. And this is also why there's such a price war in China. I was at an event on Friday at Caresoft, which is a company. They have a facility here in Michigan. They do benchmarking. So they do teardowns and benchmarking of vehicles. And Terry Wajkowski, he was a GM for a long time. He used to be the chief engineer on the Silverado and Sierra pickups. He's the president of Caresoft's automotive division, and he did an interesting presentation. Caresoft has torn down a bunch of Chinese vehicles, and they had a BYD Seagull. One they had a complete one that's still drivable, and they have one that's torn down. When the Seagull came out 2 years ago, it was priced at $12,500. A few weeks ago, the price was lowered. It's been lowered a couple times since it came out.
Jeez.
The price is now $7,900.
That's insane.
And according to Terry, at that price, it's profitable because they sell a bunch of them, and it's extremely low cost to build. So $8,000 for a compact electric hatchback that gets about 200 miles of range. I think this is going to be a problem for the rest of the world. I think they're figuring out how to compete with the Chinese automakers is going to be really hard.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge. It'll be interesting to see how this rolls in the next few years.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting also, so when they tore it down, how was the quality?
Really good. Compared to, if you tore down a Chinese built car from 10 or 15 years ago, I mean, it was a joke, but it's really, really good. When you sit in these things, we're looking at some other models, like the Xiaopeng G6 and Leap Motor B10, and some of these, like the Leap Motor, this is a $22,000 car, and I would argue that it has a nicer interior than that Equinox you were driving, Nicole.
You think?
For $38,000. Oh yeah, the materials, the fit and finish, yeah, it's really solid, and it feels really premium.
So it may be a problem for other automakers. It's going to be a boon for consumers, though.
It'd be great for consumers.
And it also, if you're suddenly flooding the market with $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 electric cars, it's going to be good for the electric car market also. As far as infrastructure, because right now there's not enough to, that's a whole different conversation, but it's, if you start suddenly having a lot more people driving a lot more electric vehicles, and that takes away the affordability issue with EVs that we have now.
Yeah.
So it could open the door for a lot of, it really could change the market altogether.
It certainly could.
Interesting idea.
It's going to be a challenge though for the U.S. industry.
Yes.
Or and the European automakers, to figure out how do they compete with this kind of pricing, and there's a lot in Terry's presentation, but essentially comes down to they need to completely change the way we build vehicles. They need to completely change the organizations, and need to change the designs of the vehicles, because so much of what's been done, and part of what drives up the cost, is based on a lot of old requirements that aren't necessarily relevant anymore. And it's not, like I say, it's not like these things, when you look at a lot of the cheaper cars that we've had access to in the last 15 or 20 years, a lot of times they're really decontented. They look and feel cheap. These things do not look and feel cheap. They've got lots of features in them. So
they're going to appeal to consumers, younger people buying their first car, or, I need a commuter car just to get around town, as a third car. It makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the challenge though is, we've got trade policies that, will prevent these things from ever getting here.
Or at least not at those prices.
Yeah. And, but even if you had 100% tariff on that BYD Seagull, it's, that would still put it at $16,000, which is cheaper than anything you can buy in the U.S. market.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And I would not be surprised.
Should be an interesting future.
I would not be surprised if within the next 12 to 18 months, if BYD doesn't break ground on a factory in Canada.
Interesting.
I think it's.
You think?
Happen.
Yeah.
Given the growing antagonism of Canada to the U.S. because of the the attitude of the current administration in Washington that wants to take over Canada. A lot of Canadians are, there's a lot of U.S. made products that Canadians just don't want to buy anymore because they're getting pissed off at the U.S. And I think if BYD went to the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, and said, "Hey, we want to build an assembly plant in Windsor or outside of Toronto. What do you think about that?" I think that it would take about half a second for Doug Ford to write them a check for $500 million and say, "Here, go for it." And then you'll see all these things running around Canada.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Let's see. Speaking of Washington, they're currently still wrangling over the big ugly bill, the big budget bill, and the Congress. We talked last year after the Chevron decision came out from the Supreme Court about the potential for somebody to sue and roll back CAFE standards, the corporate average fuel economy standards and emission standards, because what was put in place during the Biden administration goes above and beyond what was in the 2007 Energy Act, which called for raising fuel economy standards to 35 miles per gallon. The administration wants to roll that back, and the Senate, in their version of the budget bill, is proposing to roll back the fuel economy standards and emission standards back to 2023 model year levels, which would eliminate, if Congress does it, they would not have to go through the rulemaking process, which, during the first Trump administration, they wanted to roll back fuel economy standards. But when you're doing it through the regulatory process, there's a whole process of, you have to do all these studies and everything and show the data. And they did a terrible job because they couldn't actually justify it by the numbers. And so that never actually happened. Now Congress is doing it, and they already passed a resolution to revoke California's waiver to let them set their own emission standards and to mandate EVs. Now they want to roll it back nationally, and so that's causing some issues as they fight over this. But they also want to eliminate the EV tax credits, as well as all the other incentives from the IRA and the 2022 infrastructure bill for building factories and making EVs more affordable to consumers.
Well, that would certainly change the outlook for EVs.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. But if we can get a $16,000 BYD Seagull without any incentives, hey, wouldn't matter, would it?
It would not.
I guess that would solve the problem, at least for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's the tax credit has made it possible for EVs to be sold at a higher price that they because they're more expensive to build than and still kept them affordable. So now that if you were going to compare the Equinox EV to the Equinox, the comparisons doesn't make as much sense, I suppose.
No, definitely not.
The trend is not between the two. I don't know.
So one of the interesting trends we're seeing in Europe with plug-in hybrids is bigger batteries, getting more electric range, and some of them the newest model from Lynk & Co, the 08, is going to have an electric range of 200 kilometers, or about over 120 miles of electric driving range, which is a lot. Nicole, when you
as good as some of the first EVs.
Yeah. Well, when you rented a Lynk & Co, when you and Russ were on vacation in Europe, was that a plug-in hybrid? Or was that a gas model?
No, it was a plug-in hybrid. Sorry, because we had a whole ridiculous time finding
A
the
plug?
charging port. Yeah, it took us like 20 minutes of pulling on random trim to find the very careful. It's like, am I going to break off a piece of trim? Nope. Yeah, that's trim. Leave that be. Like it took me forever to find it. So yes.
So yeah. Do you remember what the electric range was on that one?
Gosh, I don't remember. That was a while ago now. I do not remember what the range was on that one.
Well, and a bunch of
looking.
automakers have been going, to longer and longer ranges. The Q3, the Audi Q3 we talked about earlier, is also available as a plug-in hybrid. It's going to have 119 kilometers of range, which is about 70 miles, which is more than double what the current generation Q3 does. But Hyundai and Toyota have decided that they're not going to get into this race for longer and longer plug-in hybrid range. They think 100 kilometers, which is about 60 miles, that's a good balance. That's about the right limit. What do you guys think? 60 miles of electric range for plug-in hybrid, is that enough?
I mean, you're not getting. I mean, the thing with a plug-in hybrid is you're getting the perks. I feel like it is because you're not trying to go fully EV, right? You're somebody who still wants to have a gas engine in there for I guess like backup, or just because you like having a gas engine. 60, that's going to cover more. That's going to cover a good chunk of your day, even if you do a good bit of driving. I don't, I feel like there's this like point of diminishing returns when you keep getting a bigger battery and adding to it. Well, then just go for an EV, stop trying to go the half and half. And I feel like it seems to me like that's a decent amount of range for a PHEV for somebody who's not fully committed to going EV. If you want more, go EV.
Yeah.
And I think that also depends on the goal. I mean, if your goal is to eventually get people to realize that they could have an EV, then the longer range will prove it to them. So if you have a car with 120 miles of range and you find you're never going through that, then maybe an EV is right for you. But I think, to Nicole's point, for most drivers, 60 miles is going to be fine. If you're using as a proper plug-in hybrid, that lets you use it for, probably for most people, for most of the time, use it as an EV, but still have that ability to go on the road trip. So you don't need a second vehicle if you're going to do long distance driving. And so you get the benefits of both. I think 30 miles, which has been kind of the typical 35 miles is most plug-in hybrids now. That's right on the edge. I think they say the average commute is what, 30 to 40 miles.
Right.
Yeah, it's like in the U.S., about 80% of daily driving is less than 40 miles.
Right. So for most people, that's right on the edge. If they need to go on a little extra errand, they're going to run their gas engine. But 60 miles, chances are you can keep that as an EV for, the bulk of your driving. And so I think it makes sense to go to that. But beyond that, then, then I think it's basically acting as a tool to educate people that they could buy an EV. That seems like an expensive tool.
Yeah, because if you have enough range to cover your daily needs, any battery you have, and you still have an engine in there, any battery you have beyond that is dead weight that you're carrying around, which is going to reduce your efficiency and add a significant amount of cost. So it's a matter of trying to find, like I said, trying to find that right balance of just how much do you need so that you can do almost all, if not all, of your daily driving on electricity without having a lot of excess. And then when you do need longer trips, you've got that plug-in, you've got the engine as your backup to keep you going. I think that is the right solution.
Yeah, I mean, 50 to 60 miles would seem more than sufficient. I think 30, which is is pushing it now. So that would mean that extending out some of the current vehicles out there. Yeah. I mean, my father drives a plug-in hybrid that's it's a Sportage plug-in hybrid with about 32 miles of EV range. His drive to work is about 15 miles. So in most days he never actually has to run the gas engine, but when he has to run errands, it starts up and it's fine. So he has an EV for most of the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of EVs, are either of you familiar with Ample?
No.
So
Never heard of it.
They're a U.S. company. They developed a battery swapping system, but unlike when Tesla briefly did battery swapping, they did at least 3 or 4 swaps at their swap station that they had in California, maybe 5. I don't know, but instead of swapping the entire battery, Apple came up with a system where you just swap modules. And so their system involves replacing the standard battery pack in an EV, in an existing EV, with a pack. It's the same form factor, same size, so it fits right in, but it holds their purpose-built modules. And then their swapping system just plugs in, takes out the modules and replaces them with charged modules. They did it first. They did some pilots around San Francisco with a fleet of Nissan Leafs that they were retrofitted for, I think, for some sort of taxi or ride-hailing company. So it was a fleet vehicle. They had a deal with Fisker. Fisker was going to implement this in some of their future vehicles. Obviously, that's never going to happen. But then they also did a deal with Stellantis, and they now have a fleet of 100 Fiat 500Es with these swappable modules that they are testing as part of their Free to Move fleet in Spain. So this is a car sharing fleet, and so they have some of these. They have there's 40 of them in Madrid right now. And then they started with 40, and they now have 100 of them in Madrid as part of this car sharing fleet. And they have some swap stations where when you're using the vehicle, when it needs charged, instead of plugging it in, you can just pull into the swap station. It pops out a couple of modules, pops in a couple of fresh charged modules, and then you're on your way again. What do you think about this?
I always thought that would be an excellent idea if they could figure out a way to make it work, because it eliminates the whole charging time. Mm-hmm. It's like swapping your propane tanks. Yeah. You bring in the empty and you drive away with the full one. You don't have to wait while they fill it up. But I think that, back to the same old problem there always is, infrastructure. So now you have to set up a whole bunch of battery changing stations in order to make this work. And it's going to be considerably less universal, I would imagine, than if you just plug it in.
Well, and there, that's the key, is to, I think, to really make this workable. I mean, this is fine, I think, for right now for fleet applications. If you've got a large enough fleet, and you need the vehicles available, you want to minimize the downtime. You can set up 1 or 2 of these swap stations for your fleet, and that works fine. It's a lot less expensive than doing a DC charging station. Those can get really, really expensive. But I think the key is going to be getting a standardized modules that everybody agrees to use. And we've talked in a previous episode about CATL's system. They've got their own system called Choco Swap, which is similar to the Ample system, although the CATL modules are a little bit larger, and it's designed for a vehicle to use anywhere from 1 to 3 of those modules, and they can be, depending on the vehicle size, they can be arranged either transversely across the vehicle or longitudinally for a smaller vehicle. And if you don't need much range, you can pay. You can just get a single module. If you need to take a longer trip, you can get 2 or 3 modules if it's a large enough vehicle. And in China, there's already 10 OEMs, 10 EV makers that have signed up to use the Choco Swap system, and they are planning to install 4,000 of these swap stations in the next year. Which, in China, they move fast, and so they can do this kind of stuff.
And I love the idea of it, but I do think that it's a similar challenge to, just trying to get EV chargers up all over the place trying to get the stations. I'm looking at the image that it has for the swap station on this, and it's like the car is parked entirely inside of this little thing that makes me think of like when you have a car wash that you drive in and the wash moves around you. You know,
same kind of idea.
Yeah, it looks kind of like that, and it's not an insignificant little spot.
It's a structure.
Right. It's like a whole structure. So, you think about the complications of getting chargers installed and all of that. This is a commitment. And if it's just, you'd have to have a lot of OEMs buy into this, to make this a viable option.
Well, most of these swap stations, they typically take equivalent of about 2 to 3 parking spaces. But if you compare that to, and you can, your throughput on this can be, way faster than DC charging stations. And, we've got DC, typical like Electrify America stations now are either 4 or 6 stalls. Tesla supercharger stations are typically about a dozen, but there's one under construction now in California with something like 120 stalls. That's a lot more space and a lot more power that's got to come in to feed. If you're charging 120 vehicles, you need a lot of power. And with this, because you're trickle charging these batteries, these modules at a much slower pace, you don't need nearly as much power. It doesn't need nearly as much space. They can install one of these in a couple of days, as opposed to weeks or months that it takes to set up a DC charging station. Plus, the permitting time for DC charging stations is also additional months. So it's I think that longer term, this can actually, if we can scale this, and like I said, the problem has always been standardization or lack of standardization, because every EV's got different size battery pack, different chemistries. If we can move towards some standards as the battery technology matures, I think that longer term, this can be the better solution.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if we can get a lot of OEMs, we have to have enough that it's not just the Fiat that's buying into this. You need to be able to pull into this with a lot of different vehicles and make it work like a gas station or like a charging station, where it applies sort of to everyone. And that's so very much the challenge with EVs is this technology is it's still very new. We're still figuring it out. And until this unifying everything.
Yeah.
is going to take some time, and the unifying everything is complicated, getting everybody to work together.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it be, based on manufacturers. So, GM batteries tend to be GM batteries. But, the batteries are also such a part of the structure of the cars and the design of the cars that having a universal module that can go into a Fiat, or you put 3 of them into a Hummer EV, I just don't see that, at least in their current way, being able to do both.
Yeah, I mean, the vehicle really needs to be designed for it. So you're not going to be able to do this with most current generation EVs, but future generation EVs, I think, can be designed around this type of system. And that's exactly what's happening in China.
Yeah.
Where, in China, their development time for a new vehicle is 14 to 18 months, as opposed to 3 to 5 years.
And plus, they've got plenty of space to build them.
So. They do, yeah. They've got lots of available assembly lines. All right. On a non-EV thing, sticking with Stellantis, we talked a couple weeks ago about Ram bringing the Hemi back to the Ram 1500. And that was Tim Kuniskis' number one priority when he unretired. But during the presentation, the background presentation a few weeks ago, before that announcement, one of the things he talked about was that trucks are. He acknowledged, trucks are getting a lot more. They've gotten a lot more expensive, and people are doing 7-8 year loans on trucks now. Average apparently time that people own a full size truck is about 9 years. So when you've got, people taking 8-year loans to buy a truck, one of the problems is, your warranties have typically been like 3 years, 36,000 miles. So Ram's trying to address that by upgrading their battery or their powertrain warranty on their trucks. To try and give customers more confidence and hopefully attract them back from Ford and GM and Toyota. So they have launched a 10-year, 100,000 mile limited powertrain warranty for starting with their 2026 model year full size pickups.
I think it's a great selling point. I mean, it's worked well for Kia, who's
Hyundai.
that's one of their biggest selling point is the 10-year, 100,000 mile warranty. And so it's, if one of the reasons not to buy a Ram is because you're worried that something's going to happen with the engine before you paid it off, this solves that issue at least.
Yeah, no, I think anytime you extend the warranties, that's a big deal for people because they're looking at not just the cost of the vehicle itself, but am I going to be on the hook for repairs in 5 years? And that 10-year, 100,000 miles, that's kind of nice. That gives you some peace of mind that you're not going to get stuck in a year or two.
Yeah. In the announcement, they said 80% of new truck loans now exceed 5 years. So a 3-year warranty is not very helpful if your engine fails at year 4.
Yeah.
Then you still have another year left to pay off the truck.
Yeah, that would be an issue.
Let's see. You both have EV chargers at home, right?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Did you install those yourselves, or did you pay an electrician to come in and do it?
I paid an electrician.
Did not trust myself to do that, so I paid someone to do that.
I paid an electrician.
When it comes to like,
go ahead.
If it comes to large doses of electricity, I'd like to stay away from that.
Yes.
So Nicole, you trust Russ to replace the outlets and light switches in your bedroom.
I do. Outlets and light switches. Well, because they're already wired and you're literally just turning off the power, taking one thing off, putting a new thing on. The man has a degree in aerospace and ocean engineering. I hope he can manage to change an outlet, but I don't want him running wires from our box to the wall where we decided to put in our charger to install a whole new outlet with that kind of power. If he screws that up, the house is screwed up. Like I feel confident he's not going to do that switching out a light switch.
Okay. Fair enough. The National Electrical Code is something that gets updated periodically as things change, as technologies change. They update the electrical code. So this is the thing, when you get work done on your house, these building codes, various building codes, when you get a permit, the inspectors come out to take a look, make sure everything's up to code. The new version of the National Electrical Code the changes that are being proposed in there says it would make it illegal in coming years for many U.S. homeowners to install their own EV chargers. Right now, there's a last minute push before they finalize it from Rivian and some other stakeholders. The electrical code is partly developed by the National Fire Protection Association. And they've got actually it already happened, I guess, on Friday. Yeah, was their meeting to try and finalize this. So I'm not sure what happened. But the change that they put into the code reads permanently installed electric vehicle power transfer system equipment shall be installed by qualified persons. As proposed, the 2026 code defines a qualified person in vague terms likely to be interpreted by state and code enforcement departments to mean a licensed electrician. It wouldn't stop homeowners from doing their own work. If you don't pull a permit and then have a building inspector come out and take a look at it when you're done, you could end up. The reason why they want to take that out is because they know that there's going to be some people that are going to do it anyway. But what happens is if you do it yourself and you don't have it inspected, then you could end up with a poorly done job. Mm-hmm. And so what they would rather do is say, you can do it yourself, but you still have to get a permit and have it inspected, by your building inspector. So you get your local building permit to in order to do it. So it's kind of acknowledging that people are going to do it, but make it so that they, at least hopefully somebody will take a look at it and double check it for them.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
That would, yeah. I mean, it is a lot of power going through there, and that's why I did not. I mean, there are plenty of videos out there. I could probably figure out how to do it myself, but I just don't. Don't feel comfortable with that. I'm sure there are people out there who are.
Yeah, and haven't had any issues with it. So
my father is a general contractor and would probably do it himself.
Yeah,
if you were to put one in.
Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. It's just too big a deal. It's. I mean, you can screw up electricity. Things catch fire and burn down to the ground, and I just don't want to. I don't want to risk that with something that has that much power flowing through it and potential to blow up my house and my car at the same time. Like, no.
Well, I remember.
Yeah, this thing seemed bad.
Seems bad to risk both of those things in the same outlet.
Yes.
Back in 2011, I was working at GM in technology comms, and this was shortly after the first generation Volt launched. And a few months after it launched, there was a fire somewhere in New York State. Somebody's garage burned down, and there was a Volt in there. It was plugged in and charging. And, when we got the news about this, we had a meeting, we were having a discussion about, okay, how do we respond to this? And at the time we didn't actually know very much, but from the initial fire marshal's report, looking at the photos and the initial fire marshal's report, it looked like the problem, because we wanted to, they wanted to be able to reassure customers that the problem was not with the car. And it ultimately turned out that it was not the car. It was the charging setup that the homeowner had put in their garage. They had done it themselves and had done a less than ideal job.
Less than ideal.
And when they were charging their Volt, wiring overheated and melted and sparked and caused a fire, and bad stuff happened. The part that was problematic with the car was when they after they got the fire put out and they hauled it away, 2 days later the battery self-ignited again while it was at the junkyard.
Yeah.
Really?
Because they hadn't got it completely discharged, and so it reignited itself.
Nice.
Yeah, but the original fire was not the fault of the car.
Yeah. See, so lost the car and the garage. See, don't let your husband do that, or you do that, or your wife do that, or anybody do that.
All right. Honda's an interesting company. They they make cars, they make motorcycles, they make generators, they make lawnmowers, and they make jets, business jets. And now they've started a new business venture. It's part of it comes from the Honda New Business Innovation Lab. So they've started something in Frankfurt called a new business called Fastport, and their first vehicle is the Fastport eQuad micromobility vehicle.
Just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, but what it is, it's a sort of a 4-wheel electric cargo bike. Sort of it's not it's a quadricycle, really.
This is weird looking.
Yeah, it is kind of weird looking, but it it's designed for doing local deliveries. So
I can see that. For a second, I'm like, what? I wasn't catching the delivery part, but I'm like, it's a delivery thing. It's, I guess, but it seems it has like the outside of it looks kind of like a roll cage. It has like the tubular bars all around it. But I'm thinking like in deliveries, like if you're in a situation where you need to use last mile delivery, like put yourself in New York City with something that just has what looks like not super strong pieces in between those little roll bars, your thing is gonna get destroyed in 5 minutes.
I guess it's better than being on a bicycle.
Yeah.
I guess.
And, in Manhattan, the average speed is only 8 miles an hour anyway.
Yeah. I know, right?
It's an interesting idea. I like the idea. I mean, because you could park it anywhere. You could park it on the sidewalk practically, probably.
Right? It's super slim. It looks very thin. Like they have pictures of it next to actual cars, and the cars look much wider.
Mm-hmm.
So how much can it haul? Does it say? I was looking to see.
Not sure what.
Design for use in
cargo
bike
box
lanes.
Dimensions. Maximum payload 650 pounds.
Yeah. So I mean, for delivering
and
groceries,
it'll go 12 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and its range is 23 miles. So that's it's definitely
so
last few
city.
miles, and that's it.
Well, so this is one of the interesting things that they've done here in Asia. For scooters and e-bikes and stuff, there's a fairly big business for swappable batteries. So, we talked about swappable batteries for cars, for electric cars before, but this is a different approach. One of the leading company in Asia for battery swapping systems is a company called Gogoro. They're a Taiwanese company. And there's a whole bunch of scooter manufacturers that use the Gogoro battery system. And so, these are kind of like the batteries you put if you have an electric lawnmower or something, electric yard equipment, kind of like those batteries, but a little bit bigger typically than those. And what Gogoro does, and now what Honda is doing as well, they have a similar system that they've launched in Japan. They have kiosks all around town. And so kind of like with some of the other battery swap systems where you pay a monthly subscription, some number of dollars per month for a certain number of miles. What you do is, if you've got one of these scooters with a Gogoro battery in it or with a Honda battery in it, you just pull up to one of these sidewalk mounted kiosks, that's got maybe 20 or 30 batteries in it that are being charged. You pull your battery out of your scooter, jam it in there, grab a fully charged one out of the kiosk, stick it in your scooter, and you're on your way. And that's what this eQuad is using. It's using the Honda Honda Mobile Power Pack is what they call it. Perry, I don't know if you were here, was I guess about was it last year or the year before, when before the Detroit Grand Prix, Honda did an event at M1 Concourse, and they showed off their new prototype electric go-karts.
No, I wasn't there for that. That'd be fun.
And those electric carts, those are really cool, by the way. I talked about them here on the show, but those are also using the same Honda Mobile Power Packs, and so it's about the size of little bigger than a half gallon of milk, half gallon carton of milk, and you just pull it out, stick it in the kiosk, and so that's why this thing only has 23 miles of range, because that's all you need. You set up a bunch of these kiosks around town. It doesn't take up very much space, and when you need a charge, you just pull up to one of these kiosks, swap the battery, and you're on your way again. It takes like a minute.
No, it cool. Certainly makes some sense. I mean, I think, with a 12-mile-an-hour speed limit, obviously it's not going to be on the roads really at all. I mean, even in Manhattan, people do have short stints of over 12 miles an hour. So I guess you'd be over in the bike lane. I don't know if it's considered to be a bike lane type vehicle.
That's a good question. I think that's going to depend on local regulations.
Probably.
So different cities have different rules for using what's allowed to use bike lanes. So I'm not sure.
It's certainly an interesting idea, though. And I immediately saw it and thought, "Ooh, food truck."
Yeah. No, actually, yeah, that would be
mini food truck.
Yeah.
Bring the coffee truck to to wherever you need to go. I don't know. It's an interesting idea, and it looks like I guess it gets unveiled next week, and production starts in Ohio by late this year. Actually, they're saying vehicle delivery is expected to begin late 2025.
Yeah, so they're going to build these in the Honda Performance Manufacturing Center in Ohio. So this is a smaller plant next to the main Marysville assembly plant, where they used to build the NSX.
Okay. Seems like a interesting follow-up.
A little bit of a change of pace.
Yeah. Literally.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Anything else you guys want to share before we say goodbye?
No, nothing else for me.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks
for being our stand-in. Yeah, Perry. It was good
happy to do it. That's always entertaining.
Yeah. All right. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you next
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.
If you're a podcast host, listen up. This one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle. And I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.